Okay, another experiment here. I'm just kind of getting the gist of not only these pads, but just the hybrid inks that are found in these pads in terms of the colored side. I mean, I've worked with white pigment inks before, but these hybrid inks have their own characteristic, and I'm just starting to, you know, kind of dip my toes, so to speak, in the in what they, I don't know, just kind of what they're all about in terms of the usage on matte sides of matte papers as well as glossy. Okay, now I've discovered some things about glossy just in my last piece that I really like in terms of the build-up. But I don't know, these inks, being that they're a lot more surface-oriented, I don't know if a hybrid ink is absorbing. I'm guessing it's absorbing into the paper as well, like a dye-based ink does. A dye-based ink stains. Okay, that's how they color. All right, and pigment inks stay on the surface, so I'd imagine there's a little bit of both going on, but I don't know for sure. Maybe it depends on the brand of inks too, and what kind of ratio is within each color, if not brand of ink, or brand of ink, if not color. Okay, could be different on each one. I have no idea. But just in terms of kind of getting the feel of them, it's been a lot of fun. Okay, now I'm just spreading this around with a paper towel. I found that works really quite well with these inks. I'm doing this on the glossy side of my paper, so it's really spreading around really nicely. It does that too on the matte. But I'm going to try to, I don't know, do some kind of background. I thought I was kind of getting pretty crazy with the last scene that I did, but I found that even with that and these little swirly things that I was doing, by the time, you know, the end result, it still looked, I don't know, I couldn't see a lot of the textures and whatnot, and the motion. I stamped over a lot of it, but I felt like I could do more. And with certain types of media, it seems to, I don't know, kind of, I don't know, it inspires certain types of applications, of course. You know, the thicker the media, you can do certain things with it. Thinner the media, you know, you wouldn't use maybe something like encaustics or something like that, you know, wax the way you would use, you know, like watercolors or something like that. So, I don't know, I'm trying to, I don't know, dip into my inner whatever to kind of find a really good way to use these inks and colors that will be really conducive for their characteristics, mainly in terms of the surface oriented application of them. You know, how they're not just absorbing right into the scene. So, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about this kind of oh, it's not really an abstract, but kind of a oh, I don't know if I'd call it impressionistic, maybe. I don't know, impressionistic version of some kind of sun here. And I'm working through the warmer tones here. Okay, now here's the thing that I recognize with one of the first pieces. Okay, see, as I add that on, just kind of like dye-based inks, I mean, if you add it on and you dab it down, it's kind of building up on the surface of the paper, right? But these ones, even more so than dye-based inks, when I get them really built up and the paper has achieved a supersaturation on the surface of the paper, because it is getting kind of saturated in the pulp of the paper as well. The inks really glide out, or glide across the surface of the paper, because there's kind of this wet, lubricated, you might say, surface of the paper that's already been established by those inks. But this one, because it is really staying on the surface, by the time and this is just, what is this, the third color? Is this the second or third color that I don't even know? It really spreads. I can go like that, okay, and look at it. Really spreads out. So that being said, we're going to try to make use of that, or I am here, and use that property to my benefit. What that means, I don't know. I'll try to figure out something. I just figured, when I go into these pieces, I just kind of figure out, or I generally think I'll just, I'll know where I'm going when I get there. Okay, so going to something like this, I could go this way too. That might look kind of interesting. How they, do something like I don't know, like coffee or something. You put it down the whipped cream, then you take a little thing and you kind of go through it that way. I don't know. Maybe we can do something like that. Maybe even with something like this. Okay, I'm going to try to keep this a little bit more streaky here too, so I can be a lot more aware of those. I don't know what you'd say, different marks of the applicator. Let's see what happens here too. Okay, let's see how transparent, translucent these are. Okay, if I go like this, and I put this over that orange and yellow over here, does it look? Can I get a pure version of this color? I don't know if it's pure, but I'm testing out kind of opacity here too. I don't know what type of coverage this gets when you put it over the top of, other colors. Are we getting the benefit of those bottom layers kind of showing through and kind of creating this color glow? Or are we covering it up much more akin to a pigment ink? So, I don't know. I guess it's not one or the other, it's just a little bit of both. It depends on how much you layer, your current color over the top of the other ones. I'm guessing, though? I don't know. Okay, we have something like that. Pretty interesting. I'm just kind of working through. This is Mars Red. Okay, so I'm kind of working from a light to dark process here. All right, that's a really nice red there. Look how deep red that is right there. In some ways, I almost feel like I don't know, kind of streaking around. I was telling someone before, it feels like if this was kind of a warm surface, it feels like I'm kind of spreading, something like oil pastels or something around on the surface, because they drag, and they also kind of remove. See that strong saturation right there? If I come like that, I don't know if you can see that, but I've kind of removed some color a little bit. Okay. Red. Let's try the Nebula Rust. I'm unfamiliar with all these colors too, so I'm kind of learning about each one of these individually as well. It'll take me a while. Maybe not to get the gist of them, but kind of more of the specifics. And then there's always combinations of colors, what one color will look like over another. I don't do this type of thing, by the way. I'm usually more of a detail-oriented type of person. I don't do a lot of kind of like free-form kind of backgrounds, usually kind of smoother applications of things. You know, I'm a black and white illustrator, you know, tight details on stamps and things like that, so this is kind of foreign to me, so. It doesn't mean that it's not fun, though, but I'm just not real accustomed to doing this at all. All right, this is, I have a feeling that this color right here is darker than this one. Lunar Lilac. So maybe what I'll do is I'll grab another applicator right here, my really expensive applicator. I'm joking. I was joking with someone that what we'll do is we'll call these, we'll market these right here and call them color towelettes or something like that. There's so many different types of applicators that are just kind of repurposed tools from, you know, other industries or purposes brought over to the crafting world, but I don't know. Some work very well, some are kind of more so-so. They look, in theory, visually like they would be really good, but in application, I find them really bad because they're often meant for kind of other types of media, you know. So we might be using them for inks and liquid media, but they were designed to be used with powdered media, dry media. But they look like they would, and they can work, but I don't know, sometimes it's a little bit awkward. You know. Something like this is pretty comfortable because it is very ergonomic, you know, to use something like this. I really like stylus tools because the handle is shaped really comfortable for the hand. The one thing that I don't like doing, and I hate it when tools come out that are really kind of, they're not, it's like ergonomics were not really considered in the tool creation. And that goes back to my design days or whatnot. I was not an industrial designer, but you know, I spent a lot of time in the design department, and you know, would see all these things and the considerations that those designers would come up with, design students would come up with, and you know, it's always about form and function. You always want that function to be really high on the list anytime you're doing any kind of repetitive types of applications. And you really want to take good care of your hands, okay? It's really important. It might be fine for one piece, but if you do this, you know, over and over again, you really want to, you know, be careful about kind of the motion that you're doing. So always kind of keep things in a nice ergonomic kind of position for what you're doing. So you can see I'm always kind of spinning this around if I'm getting to another area like this. I don't have to keep things right side up, okay? Or whatever side it's going to end up being. Look at that. That ink right there. But the beauty of that is I can just wipe it right off like that, right? Alright, now you can see, I mean, I might want to get that dark right there. But if I kind of spread it around, it's really not allowing me to do that easily, okay? I can wait for this to set up and dry for a while. Alright, but I don't feel like doing that, so I like just getting right into it. I mean, you can certainly have, I don't know, several of these kind of in various stages, you know, go for all kinds of backgrounds. Go for this kind of horizon thing, you know, these striations. This one's kind of more of a sun, you know, and you can just have these sitting on the corner and get back to stamping over the top of them or whatever you're going to do with them. But me, I just feel like kind of getting into it. All right, now, I mean, these have these white, this is where I got some of that ink in there. The white sides of these pads, and they're really more for the, I think they've been designed for that purpose of, you know, doing your impressions with a combination of both of these right here. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take some of this white and see these lighter areas. I'm going to try to see if I can bring a little bit of emphasis into it, just so that it's not just this white space that's been left over, which I always do at dye bastings, but this is actual white, so I'm going to kind of bring that into it. See, like that? It feels like, well, it is. It's a positive type of application of that value. Okay, it's not just the negative space where I didn't color it, but this takes on, oops, that had some of that red in it. This takes on, it flattens the surface out, I think, visually, which can kind of be cool, though, okay? A lot of times I'm going for deep space, but with these pads like this, I think I want to go for more of a, I don't know, kind of a different look that's more along the, look at this, this is white, it's lifting my hybrid ink because the hybrid ink is on the surface, so it's going right here in the sun. I'm expecting it to just apply over the top of it, but it's really removing some of it, which is interesting to me, so that's the type of thing I'm trying to learn about. So if I want it lighter, I better go with kind of more of a dabbing motion like this, maybe. Something like that. And then, you know, this is leaving kind of a texture, and then I can kind of go in here and just kind of blend that out like so. That's just what I'm doing here. I mean, that's, don't look at this video as like a technique, you know, video. It's definitely an experimental video. If you like what you see at the end result, then you can kind of follow along and it becomes instructional, but by no means am I qualified to instruct with what I'm doing here. Okay, so just going for a little bit of, oops, texture right there. See that right there? It's kind of this flame thing kind of moving out like that. It's kind of interesting. Just kind of playing around. Okay. Well, let's see here. Alright, that looks pretty textural. Just kind of the thing I was going for. I wanted these bands to be more defined, okay? And, okay, let's see what this looks like with some imagery stamped over the top. I like going with something very bold, okay? And I was thinking this lighthouse would be a good candidate. I didn't think about it too long, I just want to grab something. Okay. Now, on these pads here, I kind of have to watch what I'm doing here, because it's a small pad, so large stamps you kind of have to configure it where you're getting that ink on it without going into the white side. Unless you're going to incorporate some of that white, of course, into it, which is what it's been designed to do. But I just want to play around with the hybrid aspect of this right now, in terms of just a straight impression, I think. Okay, I'm just looking at this to make sure that I've colored everything. If I see that glistening, you know, kind of ink on there, then we should be good to go. I'm not sure where this ink stands in terms of the viscosity of it or whatnot, how thick this ink is, so you know, I want to know what kind of detail I can get out of it. So far so good though, with what I've tested on my first 2 experiments. on this right here. The mass of the stamp is right here, most area, but you go press down here, top, middle, okay? I stand up when doing this too, and I also have this stack of papers up here. Okay, I'm spending a lot more time pressing into this because there's so many layers of ink down here too, and I know those ink layers are suspended on here, so I'm just not quite sure how long it takes for this to transfer over. I want to stamp wet into wet, pull this off, and, you know, like a vacuum, that ink comes right off the surface like that. Oh, it's beautiful, actually. That's as good as an impression of all that tight detail like that as a VersaFine. Okay? And VersaFine gives you really good impressions. But look at that. Okay, so very pleased to see that, especially with the amount of pigment ink that I put down there too. It doesn't seem to be any kind of problem at all in terms of the transferring of this ink. Now, if I put dye-based ink over the top of that, I don't think it would go on there. I think it would resist it, because you usually can't put dye over pigment ink real well without that pigment ink kind of bleeding through and showing through. Now, that might happen on this one. I'm not sure, but we'll see. Okay, this is the Rocks and Waves. It's well, it's an accompanying stamp for the Light Rocks and Waves, which is the lighthouse stamp. Okay. See how I do this? I don't have to press like all the way down. I'm kind of just pressing. I see it here, here, here. You know what I mean? You can kind of use less pressure the more targeted you do this. And don't rock your stamp like this, otherwise, you know, you're going to get the edges and everything like that all smashed. So straight, even pressure, but just adjust your pressure around the stamp. It's not the size of the stamp, too. It's always about the surface area of the stamp. The more surface area it is, the more solids, the more pressure you have to use, because when you're pressing on here, your pressure gets distributed amongst the surface area. Okay. Let's use this again. Maybe a couple more times. Okay, let me put one over here. So you just overlap. You don't need to do any masking with most Stampscapes stamps. I designed these stamps with the idea that, you know, I'm probably going to be using them more than anyone else, or right up there, right? I don't want a lot of work for myself, so I designed them to where they can be used freely as possible. Now, if I put something behind that lighthouse, I might have to mask it off, you know, because I don't want a, you know, a branch, you know, or something like that, or a moon showing in that area of the lighthouse, but it, you know, it's going to be really minimal. Okay, so look at that. There's a certain feel to it, huh? That that background kind of lends itself to. It feels like two different kind of. I was going to say genres, but that's not the word. Like two different feels. This is really tight, detailed, and this is real loose and kind of free form, right? I think it makes for a pretty decent combination. Okay, let's see. I'm analyzing. I'm trying to think if I want some. If I want to put us on a, you know, the foreground or something like that here. I tell you what, though, before I do that, one of the things I really enjoyed doing on my last piece was adding some different tones into the scene. Okay, now, I mean, I have light and shade in all these designs, okay? But I think it's really fun to go in and define further the light and shade, depending on where your light and shade has been developed in the scene. Okay, so in this case, it's the sun is right there. All right. If the sun was over here, maybe it would involve kind of a different approach in terms of where I do my shading. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to alter this area down here and define a little bit further where my light and shadow is going to be. Okay, now don't make this too complicated. Just don't tone out everything, okay? It's not as if you put a shadow over here, it's like, oh my god, I messed up, or something like that. But here's my general thoughts. You see these crashing waves here? I like to leave those areas kind of illuminated. They're often kind of frothy, you know, foam or something like that, and that type of thing is a lot more reflective of lighting than other areas, okay? Down here in the rocks, maybe, I mean, it's already a little bit darker because my bands around on the perimeter got darker, but let's go in and really emphasize like this crashing wave area, okay? So let's just kind of take this, and I'm just going with a really light touch. I'm not going like this, okay, real hard. I'm just going like this, okay? Really lightly, more like that, okay? And I'm just making this really light, okay? So if you work in this kind of very slow, methodical manner like that, you can get that application, a very slow application, which is really conducive for control, okay? Now watch me go around that wave right there, okay? Let's go with a little bit more tone down here, okay? I'm putting darkness around the wave so that the other part of the wave stands out a little bit more. It makes it, I think, more dramatic, potentially. See that? Doesn't that part of the wave really stand out now? And now this part down here, I mean, I can make it completely black, or we can just leave it as is. It's just a lighter version of it, right? But look at the drama we've brought into just that small area of the piece like that, okay? And you can do that wherever you want. You know, you can just bring emphasis to whatever. I can have this wave down here much lighter by adding that darker contrast right next to it, like that. Now see, that one really stands out right there. I don't know if I like it. I might want it darker. I think I do want that darker just so that this one in the background stands out a little bit more. Okay, so that looks okay, something like that, I can say. It's pretty fun. Oh, here. See on this lighthouse portion? Alright, this is where I have to be a little bit more delicate. Let's go with a really dry application of this, but let's make that lighthouse on this front side of it darker, okay? This, I'll tone it in a little bit. See right there how I've toned that in. Let's do that right here as well. I'm picking up some of the white pigment ink this was stamped over the front, so it's not too bad. But it is kind of dragging it and spreading it around on that lighthouse front, which I don't really want, but it doesn't look too bad. But look at that now. It stands out against that background much more kind of in a solid feel, I guess. We've given it opacity so it's not just so see-through, you know, with that tone in the background. Let me get this right here. Let me get a little bit of tone on these rocks. This is where I do, you know, I'm doing like some kind of fine-tuned tweaking. Let's say that this is cast into shadows, so this area, that wave wasn't so illuminated. You don't have to do, something like that, but I don't know, I'm just kind of testing and, seeing if I like it. I can always do it very lightly, and then I can add more tone and make it darker and darker. So things can be extremely incremental in terms of our applications. All right? It doesn't have to be, you don't want to be impatient like this and go like this, and it was super soaked with black and you get this big shape there, right? But this right here, I mean, it takes a lot of tapping before I can even see some of that like gray even in that area. So that gives you a lot of control, and you don't have to be surprised. But okay, so that looks pretty good there. All right, I was going to use this other branch. I'm just going to use the oak branch here. I'm going to put this tree here in the foreground, maybe like over here. I think a couple birds would be pretty cool. There's a lot of open sky area. And then let's get a little bit more texture going, and I'll show you what I'm thinking about with that. Little branch right there, it kind of puts us on the shoreline, kind of looking out there. Okay, I think another piece right here. What you do when you're putting like a tree or a bush like this, you're saying that there's kind of some land there. And us as a viewer, okay, looking at this scene, it gives us somewhere to stand. You don't have to show it, but it's implied through the use of these branches, right? That there is something to stand on there. It's not just like this kind of all-seeing eye, from different angles. You don't have to put something like that, but it's kind of this human type of thing. If there's kind of this overlook somewhere, in a scene like this, chances are we're going to walk over there towards the edge and look at something, right? If there's like 100 yards of, ledge before some kind of drop off, to look over this expansive area into the ocean or whatever, most people don't stay, 100 yards away or something like that. They're going to walk over to it, They want to see this, as full a scene as possible. So this type of thing right here, there's kind of this emotional element, or that's kind of tied into our curiosity or whatever, to see what's over there. And these kind of plants right there kind of anchor us, in terms of maybe a safe spot to look into there. We're saying that these trees are here, so they've been growing for a while, and you can kind of stand there safely. They're not, the ocean and tides aren't kind of washing out this area that we're watching the scene on. So I think, I don't know, it accomplishes a few things by doing something like that. We get this extra depth, and in the scene, it's kind of a textural thing too. I got all my stamp pads kind of flopping around here. I have a lot of new stamp pads here. I need an organizer where they can kind of slip in there now. These aren't like stackable. Okay, so let's add some extra birds. These are some gulls like this. I'm being conscious not to take something like this and press too hard. Alright? Don't take like a small stamp with not a lot of surface area and smash it in like this, like you know, did with, use more pressure with the larger stamps, like the oak branch there. Now this one's even smaller, okay? Light, even pressure. I don't know, I just do a couple of them like that. Kind of like they're swirling around like so. Sometimes I even do them in a lighter tone, so it looks like, darker, smaller, lighter, something like that. You can do them and stamp them out in a color, and it looks like they're farther off in the distance. Okay, now from a textural standpoint, I was mentioning I'm going to try something with these. I thought that these inks, these hybrid inks, are really conducive for achieving texture, and I do like texture, and there's something with Dr. Martin's bleed proof white that might look kind of interesting with this. And doing that splatter painting technique, using a toothbrush right here, and we do have some splashing waves down here, so maybe I add some of that to it. You have to kind of mix this up anytime you use it, because the Dr. Martin's bleed proof white gets pretty dry. Now, it looks like I have enough water in here from the previous time that I used it, so you want to get it to kind of like a really thick syrup consistency. You don't have to mix it up right down to the bottom of the thing. You just kind of mix up, the top portion of it. It's like a cake, of this paint within this bottle here, so just kind of get the top going and get a nice consistency. Use toothbrush. I'm guessing kind of medium stiffness, maybe not too soft, I don't know. Maybe soft would work, I don't know. But I think for my purposes, I'm thinking I'm kind of a medium brush to medium soft, maybe, I don't know. Okay, I think I have some on there. I don't think I have enough here. Okay, now I always take off the extra, otherwise I'm going to get a big blob of it, because this is not super thick. So I just kind of keep wiping it out and squeezing it out a little bit, until I get the right consistency. It's always kind of hard to predict, because you're not doing this every day and whatnot, so. Okay, now I was thinking it might be kind of interesting to have some kind of textures out here anyway, for like some stars or something. I don't know if it's really stars, but I mean this is like a sunset, but it's just kind of texture, for this abstraction. Let's see if I can get in there where you can see it. Kind of being a little bit conservative and careful. I kind of like to do it away from the paper too, where it's not over the top, so I don't get a drop, on accident. Okay, let's see. Let's get down here in the splashing area. Okay. Kind of the closer you get, the more targeted of an area you can kind of splatter. Okay, so you can see it down here. I mean, we can add that in, certainly, with like a gel pen or a paint pen or something like that, but oh, I don't know. If you have some kind of if you want to put a lot of it down, it's kind of easier doing it this way. That's a lot of fun too, for sure. And it takes us back to, you know, like elementary school, like kindergarten or something, when we, you know, do these types of techniques. So it's kind of always that part of it, which is really fun. I think this scene right here could really use a quote, can it? There's a big open area right there that's wide open for something. I probably should have stamped that before I did this, because that Dr. Martens does leave a little bead of paint right on the surface that I'd have to stamp over, but maybe if we do it in something, you know, thick enough, it'll work just fine. Okay, so the little window right there, the lighthouse, became darker. Okay, this is just a white paint pen. It's an acrylic white paint pen. You can try a gel pen if you want to too, but see, I just kind of want to bring out that lighthouse interior window light a little bit more, like so. The lamp I'll illuminate a little bit more, like so. Now, here's where we can get into kind of more specifics if you want to. Add some bigger splashes towards the tops of the waves if we want. Those crashing waves down there. Maybe a little bit of overkill, but who cares? Maybe a couple larger textural things out here. I kind of hesitate to call them stars, but it doesn't have to be a literal interpretation of the sky here either. It is rather freeform and, you know, more impressionistic of a sky, so why not put, you know, whatever you want up there. Could be more kind of like children's storybook, picture book type of things going on. Eric Carle. I don't know, I just wanted to a little bit more whimsical with these inks. Okay, let's see what we can do here. In the form of a quote. Let me see if I can find a quote for this one. I should have a good quote for it somewhere. I'll try to figure out which one that might be. Okay? Okay, nature always wears the colors of the spirit. Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'm doing a test print here. I don't know. Someone asked me if I use a positioner, and I think for something like this it would be beneficial just to get this on straighter. But I haven't used positioners before, so what I like to do is I like to just do a test print just to get my kind of my level, I don't know, somewhat my internal level somewhat calibrated. I don't know, some of these still come out a little bit crooked. I don't know, I don't really sweat that, because once it's down anyway. But I'm going to stamp it in that black hybrid ink. And I didn't get a lot of that Dr. Martens out there, so I think this will be fine. I think I've used this quote with this stamp before too, so where do I want it to go? I think I'll put it up here. Okay. not too bad in terms of level. Yeah, I definitely don't want... That's one of those things where you just definitely don't want to stamp out, you know, if you don't have a positioner, or you're not using a positioner, to not stamp out a certain part of the word. You know, Scenic stamps, if you miss a part, it doesn't really matter. You can just kind of stamp another part of it again, but with words, of course, you really need that in there. Alright, so nature always wears the colors of the spirit. You know, we got some decent colors working back in here. That white pigment ink is okay, I don't know. I like it around here. But overall, when you hold it out kind of at arm's distance, let me see how my exposure's going. Let me re-expose right. Okay, a little bit. That's a little bit truer. My camera exposure. This is about what it looks like. So, I don't know, some pretty decent radiant warm tones, light tones coming from that area. I like the Dr. Martens over the top of it. It provides a different texture to this kind of more painterly, I don't know. It's almost like pastel-ish to me, background. And we have the crisp impressions against it to create a little bit of a contrast. And I don't know, I think they harmonize pretty decently with each other. You know, the different kind of things, the crispness of the imagery and word stamp, and the kind of more freeform abstract nature of the entire background, which really sets the tone for this piece. I think the background is the thing that does it. So, and that's what I was going for in terms of the background. I wanted more of this kind of real, kind of hand-done, painterly type of look to the piece. So, I don't know, I think it's pretty fun. So, I don't know, a lot more experiments to do. And again, getting used to the hybrid inks on here. I want to practice around and play around a little bit more with them on the matte paper as well, and see what it looks like when the tones get a little bit more built up on matte. I really like the feeling of the first piece that I did with that, yeah, and how I was able to kind of spread them around, because they spread around differently on matte when you start building it up than on glossy. Glossy probably, when I go in to manipulate, you know, the third or fourth layer, the whole color structure that I built up is probably moving around a little bit more than it would be on a matte. So the matte would hold it a little bit more. So I might like that in terms of the control over the application, rather than kind of lifting off everything that I've already done, you know, when I get into the darker tones. So, but the glossy does look okay, I think, on here, and I don't know, it's certainly fun to play around with again. Thanks to the Moon and the Maker for sending the pads out for me to have fun with and experiment and play with. Certainly enjoying myself and learning about new things, which is always a thing with us in the stamping community, is it not? To learn and play around with, I don't know, whatever the latest thing is. I don't know when these came out, but, you know, they're new to me. Hybrid inks have been around for a really long time, but those are new to me as well, so I don't know. It's been fun so far. Alright, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section, or if you have any comments in general about hybrid inks and how I can use them and what you found about them, please leave it in the comment section, or about these pads. You know, the Moonlight Duo pads, you know, specifically. I can't really find too much online material out there, and I'm always wanting to learn new things. And if I can expedite that with, you know, some knowledge that from people that have already used them, that'd be great. All right, thanks again.